Vivian, and you're listening to the West Ada podcast.
The hallways are so different than, when you and I went to school. And now we have access to so much more. And our students can now have access to that in high school. That's learning. Not everyone needs to have every upper level math class because they're not going to go be a mechanical engineer. That's okay.
Right.
We've got all of these other opportunities. And I think West Ada is a shining example of that.
Wow, there is absolutely no question that Superintendent Critchfield takes her job seriously.
It's so cool. And she talks about strengths, weaknesses. It's you're going to love this conversation.
Well, and I love that she cares enough to say, my signature is on, these diplomas and they mean something. It means something when you graduate from a school in Idaho. So that's just super cool. And hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Katie Rodenbaugh.
I'm Ken Hyde.
And you're watching and listening to the West Ada podcast. Thank you for being here today.
It's great to have. And again, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Debbie Critchfield, joins us today. And we talked about a number of things. Yeah. The budget, her parents' Bill of Rights, the importance of CTE. So anyway, again, I think you're going to love this. Thank you for being here. Let's get right to it.
All right. We are here with Superintendent of Public Instruction, Debbie Critchfield. Welcome, Superintendent Critchfield.
Thank you. I'm excited about this whole setup.
Oh, great to have you here. Yeah, great to have you here.
Well, it's such a treat for us to get to have the superintendent of the state, public education.
Let's see if you say that at the end.
I'm sure we will. We follow education closely, and I've worked in education for a long time. So I'm grateful as a parent to have you in this role. And so why don't you tell us, for the parents who don't know and who aren't familiar with you, a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you got to
all
this
the background
position.
Stuff.
Yeah.
All the stuff. Yeah. Okay. I've been involved in education for a little more than 20 years, I guess, if we're going to kind of put a time frame on that. And I got interested in it when my children were small. I married my husband, moved to a small community in Idaho in the Magic Valley by the name of Oakley.
And a lot of people probably don't know where that is.
Yeah,
but so
it's
thank you for
20 miles south of Burley.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You're wanting to go through it to get to the city of Rocks. But anyway, he and his family, just fourth generation farm family. And I got to Idaho as quickly as I could. So I've been here a little more than 30 years. But as my kids were small, I kind of was looking for, just a little bit of a distraction from that everyday life. And a friend of my next door neighbor actually was a teacher, and she needed a substitute teacher one day. She got the sub pool was thin or whatever. And so she came and she said, please, could you just go and substitute? And anyway, and I thought, I kind of like this. This is kind of fun. And so I did that for 6 years. And I only asked to be assigned to grades 7 through 12.
Interesting.
I did first grade one day and I was like, nope, these people deserve $1 million a year. Yes. This is hard.
Could not agree more.
So I'm a better fit with the tween and the teenager age. And so because of that experience, it was interesting as I would talk with other teachers, and I'm not a certified teacher, but I would talk with teachers and they would say, oh, the school board, this, that, or the other, or they didn't, or, some of these things. And so an opening became available in the zone that I lived in. And I had some people approach me about doing that. And so I ran for our local school board. And I think it was 30 years old when that happened. And then I ended up serving on the Kaja school board for 10 years.
Wow.
And it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience. And then I had some health issues arise that forced me, in some good ways, to focus on health. And then I had an opportunity to serve on Idaho State Board of Education for 7 years.
That's cool.
So I remember working with you while you were on the state board. What is really the juxtaposition to that? How do you go from serving on your Kaja County school board to this, State Board of Education?
In a weird way, there were some similarities with the school district that I had been in. Kaja is consolidated, representing really 5 distinct communities. And so as 5 board members would sit representing different communities, we had to figure out how a decision impacted, a very rural part or the most populous part of the county. And in that way, that was really a big part of what I did on the Board of Education. Okay, we're going to make a policy. what does that look like and sound like to West Ada? But what does it also sound like in Chalice or in American Falls?
Sure.
And I think that's something that a lot of people, we have such an influx of people moving in, especially to the Treasure Valley here. And I don't think the concept of how small and rural and remote most of our districts are. If you live right here in this, area, you might think it's all like this, but it's really important to represent our rural and remote districts because there are unique challenges there.
Absolutely. And there are similar challenges across the board. We're all looking to hire and retain qualified educators, and we're all looking to create as many opportunities as we can for our students to, just experience all kinds of learning. But yes, there are distinct issues, particularly, around getting teachers and what's offered. For my kids in their small high school, there was one math teacher, one science teacher, one English teacher. So you hoped you liked them and you hoped they were good because that was it. Other than online, which that's not a preferred way for a lot of our students to learn. And so, our schools really are the hearts of our towns. And I love that about our state.
That's really cool. Well, and one other quick thing to touch on your background, our theme this year is attitude over adversity. And I read somewhere that you were a breast cancer survivor. We've all got our stuff, right? But how has adversity shaped the leader that you are today? How's that been part of your story?
It really has impacted me in so many ways over the last, I think I'm 12 years away from it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Cool.
It was, something that just, this is a thing. And so, I don't delay things, and think, we'll put that off or we'll do that. I mean, if there's something that needs to be done, we're going to get it done.
Sure.
I've always had what I thought was a pretty strong work ethic anyway, but now I just have this, just an increased drive about let's make something count. Let's make something matter. Let's take this opportunity. And whether it's something related to education in the state or something, personal, like we're not going to delay that family trip. We're not going to, all of those things. Life is so precious. Whether you had cancer, it is. And we're going to soak in all the moments and, we're going to have fun along the way.
That's very cool.
And, I think I read somewhere when you said along the way, and it reminded me of this, when you were running for office, you drove up and down and across and back and forth and all over the state.
55,000 miles.
I heard a number somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was one of those things that I just sort of, I remember on one of the first trips that I thought, I'm going to pay attention to, what the odometer is. This might be kind of a fun thing to see, not for my husband with paying for gas. But anyway, I really felt very blessed and watched over to put that amount of mileage on a car and just to be on the road in the car in every setting you could possibly think of. I never had a flat tire. The only thing that happened to me was, I think it was just right before, maybe 6 weeks before the general election, a deer ran out. I got hit by a deer. I did not hit the deer just ran out, and it was thankfully minimal damage. But my husband and I talked about how fortunate and blessed we were that with all that time spent on the road, and sometimes I was by myself. And, and the deer that hit me was only like a mile from my home. So we felt really watched over.
Well, and I think the other part of the campaign, I mean, you ended up with almost 70% of the popular vote. How gratifying was that? Or gratifying might not be the right word, but how nice was it to have that kind of backing?
Well, it was awesome for the reason that I jokingly said to my family, because they were like, are you going to talk to every Idahoan? It feels like it.
Yeah.
It really sure feels like I'm gonna. And to be in the small towns, I mean, there wasn't any group that I didn't. If someone asked me to be somewhere, whether it was their living room or a restaurant with 4 people, wherever it was, I made every effort that I could. I don't think I turned anybody down. And I wanted to have that approach.
Sure.
That this is a people to people campaign. And in the end, you can hear from me. You may not like what I have to say and you may not vote for me, but you're going to know what I believe and what I want to do.
That's pretty cool. Well, and we're both parents in West Ada. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, but what's the parent's role in our children's education? What role do we fill as parents?
Well, so many. I mean, the parent is the one who gets the child to school. So I think we start with that
Sure.
making sure your child is prepared to go to school is getting them on time, and making sure that they have a backpack and breakfast and some of those things, and then overseeing. I look back at my kids, and some of my kids, they were self-starters, and I never had to ask them about their homework, and some had 6 weeks worth of homework in the backpack buried under the couch, and you have all of those flavors, and
Sure.
I think that you assist the teacher in ensuring that the things that are presented for learning, that those things get done. I like to say that a parent is the expert on their kid, and the teacher is the expert in the classroom. And when you combine both of those things, and then you add the student who needs to be a responsible learner themselves, it's the perfect recipe for the outcomes that we're looking for.
That's very cool.
That is good. That is good. Have you had any big surprises since you've been in office? Have you thought, I didn't think this would be part of the job, or I didn't realize?
I think I'm happy when we get invited to things, when, people say, hey, can you come? We've got a ribbon cutting here. Or I was in McCall just on a Wednesday night. It was a 6-hour trip. I thought, it's not that far from Boise to McCall. It's Wednesday. Let's do this thing. And so, I went and saw something that they had put together, a daycare center to help with the staffing issue that they had, that they had worked with the city and the county. And, those types of things I want to celebrate. And so that's one of the most happy moments for me. I didn't do that, but I want to be there to celebrate that with you. And I want to be there to say, nicely done. You're an example in the state, and I'm going to share that.
That's great.
Cool.
It's great. You can highlight things like that.
Very cool.
Well, I think it's probably time to take a little break, and we'll come right back and get on with some more great questions.
If your child needs a little help in the classroom, Tutor.com continues to be a valuable supplemental resource for students in grades 3 through 12.
Si su hijo necesita un poco de ayuda en sus clases, Tutor.com continúa siendo un valioso recurso gratuito para los estudiantes de tercero a 12º grado.
You can find support and how-to documents linked in the podcast show notes. That's Tutor.com.
Puede encontrar soporte y mayor información en las notas del programa de podcast que es Tutor.com.
Well, we are back here with Superintendent Critchfield, and one of the things, kind of shifting gears now, working with the legislature. I can't imagine how many moving parts and all the disparate groups you've got to try and bring together. How difficult is that?
Well, someone might think I need some medicine for saying this. That's one of my favorite parts of the job.
Really?
Absolutely.
Why do you say that?
There's so many reasons. I mean, that's government in action. Those were people that were elected from all over the state, bringing representing, what people think are important and, what needs to be done. And so then as a superintendent, you go in and say, well, here are things that we believe are important in education. How do we work together? And, how can I take something that you're working on and make it better? How do we tweak things that, need some improvement? I like the people aspect of it. And I just like that we're engaged in what is civics. I mean, this is what it means to be a citizen of the state and of the country. And I just love that.
I think that shows in your hiring style. You've brought on a team that is representative of all of our communities in the state. And I think people who pay attention can notice that your leadership represents everyone in Idaho just about. How is it working with, because we are a local control state. And so, the State Department of Education sets some guidance or some mandates, if you will, with the legislature, and then it goes down to our local school districts. And so how is that funneling of information? How is that job? Does it seem relatively easy? Does it feel like you have good partners with all of the school districts?
At times it's easy. Other times, as it is with any form of communication, you think you've told someone, you think, well, we did send you the email or we did or this, yes. But unless you really have knocked on someone's door and talked face to face with them, you're trying to capture people, in a variety of ways. The communication piece is huge for us. And one of the, I guess, gaps that I felt while I was on the Board of Education, and I just observed as I went around the state talking with administrators and educators, was this disconnect between what local school districts were doing and what was perceived or believed to be happening at the state level. And it was like, well, yeah, the state's over there to do their thing, but we're really doing our thing. Instead of this alignment of, no, we're all trying to do the same thing, which is about kids. This is about students. It's about classrooms, learning, teachers. And so there was this disconnect that you guys go do your thing over here. We're going to do our thing. And then when problems seemed hard or we weren't sure how to help, then it was easy to say, well, that's local control. Yeah. Well, everything is local control. However, we can offer some assistance. We can provide resources so that you have the best information when you go to make a decision.
That's great.
It's very cool. The budget process. I can't even balance my checkbook every month. So
thank God for Michelle.
So thank goodness. So when we're talking about millions of dollars.
Yeah.
What's that process like?
Billions.
Billions. Well, I thought 92 million for the current school year.
Well, right. I guess I'm just talking about all of the money going into public schools is 2.4.
Yeah.
5 billion.
So it's a lot. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
What's that process like?
Well, this year it feels a lot less stressful than last year, I'll tell you that. So I hadn't been elected yet. And so you have someone that's leaving office making a budget that 3 weeks into my job, I'm now trying to advocate for, which, some of that I would have done anyway. And other things I'm like, that wouldn't have been my priority. So this year we've had, the full benefit of a whole 9 months. It's so many years added up of knowing how this all works. I can't imagine someone coming into this job with zero experience, zero knowledge of the budgeting process. But with that said, we've been talking about this since we presented the budget back in January, what the 2024 budget would look like. And we want to be big on listening. I want to listen. We want to hear what people are saying and then take that and say, well, where should we be putting these dollars? So you mentioned the 92 million. That specific amount is represented in the budget as what we have estimated is that difference between what districts were able to get from enrollment going back to attendance. We don't know what that number will be. And frankly, I hope it's zero. Because what that means is the formula worked and they got all the money that they needed for the current school year. Now, if there is a difference there, then we want to be able to capture that in a way. And really, when we talk about modernizing funding, it's about being able to access all of the monies that have been appropriated by the legislature. And that 92 million was in that bubble of, well, it was appropriated, it was there, but because of the existing formula, school districts weren't able to access the money. And so we just want to make sure that school districts are whole for the 23-24 school year. Sure. And again, this is what we've estimated, but until we get the attendance numbers, we really don't know. So the lower the number is, the more that means the money already went to the school districts.
Very cool.
That is a good thing. I think there might be a misconception among parents. I'm obviously a parent. I'm around lots of parents that the attendance-based funding is going to somehow be a problem and we're not going to have enough money and kids don't go to school anyway and all that stuff. Is there something you want to speak to on that and how we can encourage our patrons?
Well, attendance is important. If you're not at school, you're not learning. And so whether or not funding is attached to attendance, I think we still need to prioritize that as families. And we want our teachers to talk about, we want you here at school, not because you represent a dollar sign, but because I care about you and I want you to learn. And I believe I've got something here in my classroom that's important for you to have. And so that's our hope and our goal, that, that's how we talk about it. And so again, going back to where are we on the differences of money, we're not sure yet. And so we'll see, what that looks like. The attendance numbers will be in at the beginning of November, and then it'll take the SDE, a few weeks to calculate and, do all of their math and everything. And so really by the beginning of December, we should have an idea of what that difference is. Schools are absolutely adept at rolling with the punches. And I would be very surprised if any parent, guardian, caretaker, whatever, or kid felt the difference when it came down to it. And that's because schools do such a good job of adjusting. And frankly, in some ways, too good of a job. I
was going to say, you can go the other,
too far the other. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, I haven't seen or heard or felt anything to say, wow, there's such a, a drastic difference this year.
Very cool. Good. Well, shifting gears, your parents' Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about that? I mean, explain to our parents what does that look like? What does that mean?
Well, it's not anything that they can't already do, and so it's really codifying that here are things that you can do, parents. Now, for some, they may say, well, why was that necessary? Well, as I traveled the state and I had 4 children go through the public school systems too, I would actually have parents talk to me all the time and say, okay, I'm not sure what to do about this. I became sort of this, de facto helper of any parent that had a problem, call Debbie and she'll be able to help you navigate it. And it always started with, you can already do this, or you can already do that. But for some reason, when you get involved in systems, even though it's your own child, some parents feel as though there's some barriers or there's some anxiety about going in and talking to a principal or talking to the teacher because they're fearful that maybe it'll go out on their child in a bad way, or am I going to become labeled as that parent, that type of thing. And so what I captured was taking things, I didn't copy and paste something from somewhere else. It was things that are really reflected what I felt and know over time, that, the government's not giving parents rights about their kid, but it's taking these things and it really serves as a reminder, and it helped parents have some comfort that, when they went in, oh yeah, that's right. I do have a right to know if my child's going to be taken to a field trip ahead of time. Absolutely. Or, some of these other things. And I was never a fan of implied consent as a parent, and I never supported it as a school board member. And that was one of the issues that we heard a lot. Well, schools will expose or have things available to my child that I may or may not have approved of. And I'm not talking about like in your math book, right, but, other things. And so, this implied consent, well, you didn't tell me no. So, well, but I also didn't tell you yes.
Right.
That's not the same thing. And really it's meant to enhance and build the relationships between schools and parents and increase the trust. And in some places we don't have that as a problem. And in other places that is an issue.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately it really is about clear communication, sounds like. I mean,
yes, you nailed it. It really is about communication. And the other piece is we have an expectation that every parent and every student should feel as though they're on the same playing field, whether you're in Salmon or whether you're in Caldwell. There are expectations that statewide, hey, I can approach this situation. It doesn't matter that, maybe this school board here liked it or that school board didn't.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I think it's time to take another quick break. But when we come back, I would love to get your thoughts on what all this looks like moving forward. What strengths, weaknesses, those kind of things. We'll be back in just a moment.
The West Ada Education Foundation's Thank a Teacher program is a great way to support and express gratitude for your child's teacher.
El programa Agradezca a un Maestro de la Fundación para la Educación de West Ada es una excelente manera de apoyar y expresar gratitud por el maestro de su hijo.
All proceeds directly benefit the teacher or program designated at the time of donation.
Todos los ingresos beneficiarán directamente al maestro o al programa designado en el momento de la donación.
You can find a link in the episode description to Thank a Teacher.
Puedes encontrar un enlace en las notas del programa del podcast para hacer una donación.
All right, and we're back. So I'm curious, 9 months into your tenure at the State Department of Education, what are some of the strengths that you see, opportunities for growth? And also, probably I ask two multi-pronged questions, but when you're on the campaign trail and you're hearing what parents want and you're developing what your core avenues are going to be, once you're in office, are you finding it hard to deliver on that or to bring all the things to fruition that you wanted to before you were in office?
That is a multi-pronged
I know. I'm sorry.
So I'm like, do I
Kind of
start
think
with the
out
last
loud.
Write this
verse?
down.
Yeah. So I will say that because of the strength of the team that I have around me, I have not felt like we have lagged at all in creating the culture and the climate that we want to have at the Department of Education. And I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish at the beginning of this year. The 3 major things that I spoke about on the campaign trail, we got those done, which isn't to say they were easy, but we worked hard. And I think that leads into kind of the strengths of, where are we going? We've got a real mentality of service, of work. I mean, just an incredible work ethic. I mentioned listening before, and you can't say that enough. That's so important to listen and to hear other perspectives, even those that, people that would say, I don't like anything that you're doing. Tell me why. Help me understand. The understanding thing is a piece of listening, and then decision making is so important. And then ultimately, you're going to make a decision, and you're going to be a leader. And that's how we like to approach things. So I'm feeling, I don't want to sound overly confident or cocky, but gosh, we're feeling like we're in a good place moving forward.
That's a great foundation.
Yeah. Well, and the challenges of leadership. I mean, because sometimes you got to be like, hey, this is the direction we're going. Let me explain this to you. But then at some point, to your point, you have to make a decision. Is that difficult? And let's go. How hard is it to get people
it's hard
dialed in?
To an extent, we're all people pleasers, some more than others. And,
and
maybe that's part of, the political game is we try to please people. But if you're pleasing everybody, you're not getting stuff done in a sense. I mean, of course, we want to pursue policies and initiatives that people like and that are supported. But there's also a political climate that for some people, it won't matter, what I say or what I do. And so my rule of thumb for myself personally is I always want to have my integrity. And so if I can defend the decision that I made with integrity, and here's the honesty behind why I made that, and I can sleep at night, then, I can't worry about, all of the negativity, because it's always going to be there. Yeah. We're never going to get, that out. Right. Right.
Sure. Well, I really appreciate that you're able to listen to all sides, take in the information, and make an educated, informed decision, but also to be a leader and a boss to say, we're moving this direction. A lot of people, a lot of leaders these days kind of pander, like you said, trying to please everyone, but you're not making progress. And so
I'll have way more wrinkles.
If
I keep that.
Right.
Well, you talked about the strengths a little bit. There's got to be stuff though that you're concerned about. Like what's on your radar that like, hey, we have to keep our eye on this and make sure we're going in the right direction. What weaknesses or concerns do you have? I'm
always concerned about the trust factor, particularly with all of the conversations around the value of public education. Today, I think that not just COVID, but for a variety of reasons, external factors and other opinions, swirling all over, that, for many people, they feel like education is broken. They feel like it's broken at the state level or nationally. But then when you actually talk to someone about the school in their backyard, they're like, don't you dare talk about my third grade teacher like that. It's like we love our local school, but we still feel like something's wrong in education. And so this disconnect of, trusting but also valuing, that, for me, that's one of the bigger struggles. And it impacts investments that can be made at the legislature and frankly at a school district level. When you go and ask your patrons to support a levy or a bond or any frankly initiative that you would like to have, how have we developed a relationship of trust? And clearly I ran, because I had what I thought were the ways to do it. And I feel like one of the things that I didn't create, but I'm having to work through is this trust issue.
Yeah.
Huge.
And that's huge. And that's something that's important for us as well at the district. Part of this podcast is getting out there in front of our parents. We spend a lot of time on the communications team. My role as community liaison is to be out in our communities, to be building those relationships so that parents know who we are. Like, these are the faces that are helping make decisions about. We're parents too. We want the best.
It makes a difference.
Yeah,
absolutely. Instead of this like faceless bureaucrat that somewhere in Boise, in some agency somewhere doing nefarious things. Nope, we're just all regular people, and most everyone's either has kids in school now or had kids. And so those things are always running through our minds.
Right.
That's very
I love
cool.
that. Something else I really appreciate too, I have a 10th grader who's really involved in career technical education classes, CTE, and diesel mechanics and auto tech and all this stuff that I'm just seeing him flourish. And I'm so grateful for those kinds of opportunities in the state. Do you want to talk a little bit about CTE programs?
Yeah,
and
you got another 45
I
minutes.
know,
on this
right?
thing.
We can get passionate about it.
I really do. This was one of the main things that I've been talking about, and I love that I'm in a position to really champion and promote it. This does not take away from traditional academic pathways of kids who want to pursue a university. We're so good at that. We're going to keep being good at that. What we haven't done as good of a job is talking about everything else. And you go around the state, and there are regional industries that are begging for students to come and take great paying jobs that will contribute to the community, that will help them support a family. We've had this disconnect between what education pathways have offered, or the lack of pathways, and what industry is offering. And I'm trying to bridge that gap through a lot of work with we've got an initiative, a $45 million grant, Career Ready Students, where we're able to support and promote very specific regional solutions to industry needs, and then helping a kid see the relevance of why they go to high school.
Right.
That's so important for some kids, we know there's kids that go, they love to learn. I had a kid that went because he loved to play basketball, and that's how we got to be on the team.
That's a good reason.
And I was okay with that. And he did well in school so that he could, play on the team. And then there are other kids that they find their niche in drama and art. Well, let's help kids who want to be mechanics, and kids who want to go into forestry, and kids who want to, work at the nuclear lab over in Idaho Falls. There are so many opportunities in our state. And to me, that's one of the most exciting things about being a part of education right now. The sky is the limit. Let's have that alignment. Let's make those connections so that when a kid goes to high school and they graduate, that diploma means something.
Absolutely.
Well, in Governor Little's launch program, how does that dovetail?
Perfectly.
What are your perceptions there? Can you explain that to our parents?
Well, it puts our students in the most, competitive and informed position to access those dollars. So they will ideally have had exposure to the types of careers and needed education that will help them accomplish their goals. And while they're in high school.
Right.
And then they, instead of taking a year or two after they graduate, well, what do I want to be when I grow up? And we don't expect any 18-year-old to know that for the rest of their lives. And the dynamics of our society are such that you're going to change careers. And that's fine. But wouldn't it be so much more valuable for a student that has, spent 2 years in a diesel mechanic program to say, yep, this is what I want to do. And I can now access the launch money. And with one other year at a community college, I can be in a job making $60 an hour.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned this, but how important is it to learn how to learn? Because I don't know how many careers I've had now at this point in my life, but it's more than a few. Yeah. How important is it to learn how to learn? And does this apply?
Absolutely. And everything that we learn brings soft skills with it. And so those are things that we hear employers talk about. Hey, it would be nice if we could have workers show up more than 3 days in a row and on time and pass the drug test and, some of these things. So, a lot of, speaking of, just learning how to learn, there's this cliche mission statement. I shouldn't say cliche, but a mission statement that always kind of made me roll my eyes a little bit, which was, we want to create lifelong learners. And it's right.
And that's true.
I mean, it is true. And I think that, I would say, well, yeah, of course we do. But really, as we cultivate the environment where a kid can come and say, this is how I see myself, and here's how I get to that place, rather than our kids, the hallways are so different than, when you and I went to school. And now we have access to so much more. And our students can now have access to that in high school. That's learning. Not everyone needs to have every upper level math class because they're not going to go be a mechanical engineer. That's okay.
Right.
We've got all of these other opportunities. And I think West Ada is a shining example of that.
It's very cool.
I think so. I mean, my kids are here.
I'm a little biased.
But I've been very pleased with my boys' education. So thank you for that. I'm actually really, really excited about the future of education and where things are going. Is there anything that we should be on the watch for? Exciting things? Maybe let's say you only get 4 years in office. I doubt that. I'm going for 12. But so if you only get 4 years in office, what is the one thing you hope that your legacy will be?
Oh boy, that's like the question of the lifetime.
Right?
That's broad, yeah.
Yeah, I think pointing back again to where we were at the beginning of this school year, not the school year, but of the calendar year in January, just getting into office, to be where we are now, to be on the right track of focusing on literacy, focusing on preparing our students. I guess I could sum it up again by saying, that our diploma matters. When you graduate from an Idaho school, that means something. And it's not just, I got a piece of paper and it was seat time. So just really quickly, I just want to share this with you and why I think so much about the diploma representing the importance of education. Because of just how things worked in the timeline of with my family and me on a local school board, I was able to sign the high school diploma of my oldest son. I was the chairman of our board.
That's cool.
Sign his diploma, present him to the diploma. It's so neat. And then as circumstances would have it, when he graduated from Idaho State University, guess who was on the Board of Education and signed his college diploma?
That's cool,
so
Debbie.
I'm pretty sure he's the only kid in the United States that has 2 diplomas that he went on to get an MBA that I didn't sign. But anyway, that had his high school and college diploma signed by his mother. But I will tell you that that's made me think my name is on that. And it's cool that your name's on there with your son's name, but I thought about that for thousands of kids that my name was on there, that I was signing that you got a good education and that I was at a place to help you do that. And I think about that all the time. What does it mean, my name saying, we're going to do a good job for you?
Super cool. Debbie, thank you so much for your time. I know we know you're busy, but
this is important. This is fun. What are you talking about?
Well, is there anything we haven't talked about that we should talk about, or have we touched on it?
Well, I think we got about everything. I'm not just pandering because I'm in West Ada, but I really, I do want the listeners to know, as someone who's traveled around the state, you've got an engaged board, you have a leader of a superintendent, and so many conversations that I'm involved with are all focused on how do we do better for our kids and our families, and that is spot on. And if we could, take that energy and take all the good things that are happening and spread it around the state, it just elevates everybody. So well done.
That's super cool. Can't thank you enough. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again to Superintendent Critchfield for being here. Just her willingness to spend time with us, awesome. And thank you for joining us as well. As always, we would love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. If you listen on iTunes, leave us a review as well, because that'll help us figure out what you want to hear and those kind of things as well. And this is a shameless plug. I do a lot of our YouTube content, so go to YouTube and subscribe to the West Ada channel, because we'd love to have your feedback there.
And it's not just podcasts on the West Ada YouTube channel. There's highlights and spotlights of all the things going on in the school district. There's school board meetings, and then of course our awesome podcast.
It's pretty darn fun. But again, and then we want to hear from you as well. If you don't mind, send us an email. We want to know what subjects you would like to hear from, not only the rest of this year, but even into the new year as well. So email is communicate@westada.org. And to learn more about the podcast or see past episodes, you can go to westada.org/podcast as well. And again, we just appreciate you all being here.
Yeah. And make sure you come back for the next episode. We have Megan Sabori. She is just one of those rock star moms. I've known her for many, many years now. She also has 3 boys, but she's someone who seems to be, she's one of those people that you say, how does she do this all? She's
when does she have time
PTA
for that?
president, and she also subs, and her boys are involved in all kinds of activities, and she finds time to work out. So, she's just a really cool person, and I think we'll have some great perspective. She served on our West Ada, the Plant Facilities Levy Advisory Committee. So she brings some great insight and some good perspective. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation.
I think all of our parents will learn something kind of cool.
Absolutely.
From that one. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here, and until then, we'll see you next time.